to get through 31 verses. So here we are at the tail end of chapter 1. So Genesis chapter 1, easiest part of your Bible that we'll look to right at the very beginning. And we're going to be looking at verses 25 to 31, and we have seen God take the nothingness and then fill it. And right here at the very tail end, we see him fill it with the last of his creation. And I'm a documentary nut, and so if there was a choice to watch something on television, it's usually a documentary or some historical program. Kind of nerd that way. But I like to watch Mr. David Attenborough, with the British accent, and he puts on this thing, this little advertisement for BBC One, and just want to show you this little thing, just shows you the variety and the complexity and the joys of the created world that God has set before us. So let's take a look
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright, blessed days, dark, sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colours of a rainbow, so pretty in the sky, also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Quite simply wonderful.
Such a beautiful world that God has put together for us. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world it is that we have this. He has placed all this on this world for our pleasure. So you recall that as we've been studying through Genesis 1, he stops at each day and he says that it is good. It is good. And when we say the word good, as a reminder to us, that word good means for the benefit of man. That he placed it there just for you. All these things. And then when you notice here at the end of this chapter, the very first time he says that it's very good. Okay? So he's saying that not only is it for your benefit, but it is an abundant blessing just for you. So let's take a look right here. We're going to take a look here at Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to begin right here in verse 24, and we're going to go to the end of the chapter. And so here we've had creation all set forth, and then we have plants, we have seed life placed into creation, and then verse 24 talks about the last of this creative work. And so he completes creation with the formation of land animals and of man. So look at verse 24. It says, and God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. So there's a couple of things I want us to take a note of if you're following along on your outline. Is that first you see the creation of animal kinds. And that word kind is the Hebrew word amin. And so it means different classifications, families of animals. Now, first of all, we see that there's creatures. There's three classifications here. We have creatures or beasts, as the King James would put it. And it's the Hebrew word kai, meaning living things. Okay, so the creation of land animals follows the same pattern as of the animals on day 5. They're created according to their different kinds. So you have different kinds, like you have the feline kind. Okay, so God created an original cat. And what you can find from all of these feline kinds is that you'll have all different, like lions, you have bobcats, ocelots, tigers, and from some original cat, you can also have the domestic cat from there. They all have that feline characteristic. You also have the ursid kind. So you have bears, grizzlies, polar pandas all along the way. You also have the canine kind. And so at some point there was an original dog, and so they probably would, so today, you can, what's the name of that dog down in Australia? It's a dingo. Okay, so what they can find even through the dingoes is that you can use these and selectively breed them along the way. You can have different forms of dogs along the way. So you have just from an ancestor, you can come up with the European age breeds, the ancient Asiatic breeds, and you also have modern wolves from there, and also coyotes and things like that. They're all of the canine kind. You also have the equine kind as well. And so you have many different kinds, but you do not see crossover from one kind to another. You have variations within the kinds, but the links between these kinds, they're, as we would put it, they're missing. Missing links. There's no links between all of these. All the classifications of these creatures, beasts, the Hebrew word kai, would also include dinosaurs at that point. By the way, this is really neat. I don't know if you guys saw this in the news recently, but up in northern Alberta, they found a dinosaur. Okay, and it was covered, the scientists who found it say it was covered with water when it died, and its skin and its internal organs are completely intact. Okay, now these are what the scientists are saying. This is 110 million years old. Now, it wouldn't last that long. Just based upon the rise, fall of temperature, you would not have that kind of ability to stay in the ground. It would just be completely rock. So they have no idea how to explain this. I would explain it that, well, about 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, Jesus Christ came to this earth, died as a ransom for our sins. About 2,000 years before that, there was a great flood that inundated the earth, and it caused all of the living animals that were not on the ark to be inundated underwater and the sediment, and I believe this is a result of that. And so that's only through a short period of time, a lot of water, can you explain the preservation of this. And so look this up. It's actually pretty neat. I think this is and Ankylosaurus. It's one of my favorite little dinosaurs with a big ball on the end and swing it around. But all of its internal organs intact. You find fossils of, they found, as we mentioned before, you can go down to the Creation Museum down here in Glendive, and they have depictions of the fossils of the leg bones of Tyrannosaurus rex with soft, squishy material left in there. That can only be explained not through a long, long period of time, but through a short period of time from the flood and from from the young Earth creation. So evolution and millions of years are, when they find things like this, it just kind of falls flat. So you have creatures being created here. You also have cattle and livestock mentioned here in the text as well. So you can have all of the variation and the breeds of cattle today. Over a few hundred years, you could come up with all of these breeds. Over a few hundred years, you could come up with all the sheep. Same thing, just like all the dogs that we see today. All the variations you can have just by selective breeding there. So you have creatures, you have cattle and livestock. You also have creeping things. Creeping things. So, this past week, BJ was downstairs in the basement, and he's like, "There's a spider," and he's freaked out by a spider, and he's like, "Somebody kill it! Somebody kill it!" And so he calls cousin Seth to come over, and he's like, "No, I can't touch that thing." So he's freaked out, and so here comes little Haley with a shoe, and she comes over and starts beating on that thing like that. And so it's creeping things. You know what exactly those are like. Spiders and insects, caterpillars, all those things that that you don't want in your sleeping bag at night when you're out camping. This was pretty cool. I saw this GIF of a caterpillar. Okay, and it's mimicking a snake. How many tries did it take over millions and millions of years for it to decide, oh man, maybe if I look like a snake, then it'll scare off predators? No, I would stop and say, perhaps it was a designer behind all of this who understood the intricacies of an animal, and that this caterpillar could scare off predators just by mimicking a snake like that. So there's an intricacy to it. Even when we stop and consider the bugs in this world, this is really cool. This is from Kent Hovind, and he talks about the bombardier beetle. Okay, let's take a look at this one right here.
You can get World Book Encyclopedia Science here, 81 edition, and read about the bombardier beetle. They've got this beetle glued down with a drop of yellow wax on his back and a paper clip stuck in there. He's clamped into a ring stand so he'll cooperate for the photographer. And then they reach up with the tweezers and pinch his front leg. The beetle is thinking, man, there's that ant, he's biting my leg again. Those guys never learn. This beetle has a cannon back near his hind end. He swings it around at the enemy and blasts his enemy with 212-degree chemicals. The temperature of boiling water. Now where does a beetle get something 212 degrees? What's he got, a furnace back there? The ejection system on the bombardier beetle shows basic similarity to the pulse jet propulsion mechanism of the German V-1 buzz bomb of World War II. What the beetle has evolved is an intermittent explosive process that fires 500 pulses per second. The explosive energy comes from the mixing of two separate fluids, hydroquinones and hydrogen peroxide with oxidative enzymes. The fundamental question, of course, is how can many small random mutations contribute to the development of mechanisms of the pulse jet, its two fuels, the pumps, the fuel reservoirs, the control system, when only the complete perfected system has survival value. Although creationists argue that the theories of evolution and natural selection are unconvincing here, it is still possible that atheistic factors still beyond our ken are operating, and what we really need is a better theory of evolution. That's grasping at straws. How on earth could a beetle evolve something so complex? What he's got back in his hind end, he has two compartments where he stores these chemicals, hydroquinones and hydrogen peroxide. If those two get together, they explode. Now, the beetle does not want them to explode in his hind end. That would be uncomfortable. So, he has another chemical that he mixes in there. It's called the inhibitor. It prevents the reaction from taking place. But now it doesn't do any good because he sprays it on his enemies and they lick it off and keep chewing off his leg. So he has a fourth chemical that he sprays in at the last possible second. The fourth chemical neutralizes the third chemical and allows the first two to explode. Is that too complicated? There's four chemicals. The first two explode. The third one makes it not explode, and the fourth one takes away the third one, and the first two explode. Now, timing is very important for the beetle. If he forgets to put the neutralizer in, or the inhibitor in, one time, he's history. If he puts the neutralizer in too soon, he's got a problem. And this beetle, as it slowly evolved over billions of years, you will hear them exploding in the jungle as they practice their chemistry. And they would gather together for the funeral. And Grandma would say, kids, take a look at your Uncle Herman. Look at him good, boys and girls. He blew us all hind end right off. You want to die like that? Go to Grandma. Well, then quit goofing off and pay attention in school. Someday we're going to be a fire-breathing beetle, you know. Well, listen, folks. If you think bombardier beetle evolved by chance, you need help. He doesn't know nothing about chemistry. He's never even been to kindergarten. His whole body is only that big. His brain is even smaller. All he knows is, if somebody bites you, squirt her. They'll eat it, if they're able. It even works on big enemies. Here's a toad about to eat bombardier beetle. Picture number 2, beetle is in the toad's mouth. Picture 3, beetle is back out. And the toad's tongue is laying on the floor, and he's backing off saying, ooh, somebody called the cook. Yeah. Too many jalapenos on that one. Man, we got to lay off this Mexican.
So there's an inherent complexity even to the smallest of creatures out there that cannot be explained by random chances in millions of years. It can only be explained that there's a creator, there's a designer behind all of it. Now, I want us to skip ahead. Look at verses 29. We'll come back to verses 26 through 28, but verse 29 through 30 indicates what these created animals would eat. Verse 29 to 30 says, "And God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. So this indicates that all of the classes of land animals and of birds were originally designed to eat plants, not meat. So the term in the King James Version says green herb. Okay, refers to all types of plants. But the evolutionists will come along and say, well, you look at this guy, large teeth, large sharp teeth, indicates, well, that animal, of course, was carnivorous. But not always. When you see large sharp teeth, all you can know from this animal is that he had big teeth. Not what he ate, but that he has big teeth. So to say that T-Rex had sharp teeth is one thing. To say how he used them is another. So take, for example, this creature right here. Okay, you look at those teeth and you're like, oh man, that's a scary thing. This is called the flying fox. This is the Pteropus vampirus. Vampire. Ooh. Vampire guy, that's a flying fox. Look at them teeth right there. You don't want to encounter that sort of thing. But if you look at that and you investigate what this animal eats, it actually is fruit eating. All it eats is fruit. Just because it has sharp teeth doesn't necessarily mean that it is carnivorous. You also take this example right here. This is a species of bear. Okay, you don't want to get caught up with that sort of thing. Look at them teeth right there. But what is it? It's a giant panda. Okay, what do pandas eat? They eat eucalyptus and bamboo things like that. Just because it has sharp teeth doesn't necessarily mean that it was a meat eater. So the question is, how could Mr. T-Rex, like a living creature like T-Rex, survive on plant matter alone? One would need a lot of protein, a lot of nutrients to build the muscle mass of a T-Rex. How could he build his mass with just vegetative matter alone? And so what we have found out, there's this botanist, okay? He did an experiment on some soybean plants, and what he did is that he increased the carbon dioxide in its environment. So here in our environment, we have about 0.6% of carbon dioxide in the air we breathe, and so he raised this percentage to 0.09%. Okay, and he put his plants in there, and what he found, just by raising the carbon dioxide, he was able to get twice as many soybeans out of these plants. And so you can take a stop and think about that, a little rabbit trail here. People in our culture think that having a lot of carbon dioxide in their environment is bad. Actually, maybe it's a little good. You actually produce a lot more. Maybe we need a little bit more in our environment. But that's another topic of conversation. But what we have found, as we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, that the original creative environment had a lot more pressure, a lot more pressure to it. And so what we have found is that in the early creation, higher oxygen, higher CO2 saturation, you add filtered sunlight to it, what will result is that the food that was present at the time of creation was more nutritious, more abundant, more apt to address the physical needs of mankind and animal alike. And so the environment was much different than what we have today. And so plant material was a lot better back then. The University of Texas established that in a 50-year time span, that 6 out of 13 nutrients in a general selection of produce had measurable declines of important nutrients. So in the last 50 years, the food we eat today is a lot less nutritious than it was back then, okay? So the losses ranged from 6 to 38% and included protein, calcium, phosphorus, iron, vitamin B2, and vitamin C. So put this in another way. An orange that was eaten 50 years ago, we would have to eat 8 of them today to have the same nutrient value as it was 50 years ago. So what's happening is that our food is a lot less nutritious than it was in the past. So I want you to imagine presently our food, what it was like back at the time of creation. It was a lot more nutritious, and it had a lot more protein, had a lot more vitamins, calcium, all those minerals that were necessary. And so an animal, like a T-Rex, could come and eat the plant material, and it could address all those physical needs that it needed back then. But our environment has changed a lot since then. Okay? It hasn't remained the same through all of biblical history. It has changed since then. We'll get a little bit more into that when we get into chapters 6, 7, and 8, when we talk about the flood and of Noah. And so this initial creation, everyone, everything. Sorry, all you carnivores. They were all vegetarians back then. But I bet it was some very good stuff. You go out and pick a mushroom and it tasted like a steak or something like that. But it was fantastic. Okay? But it's not until after the flood that we are given the instruction and the permission to eat animal protein, because the environment after the flood would have been much changed, conditions not as ideal. Plant protein would not be enough to sustain all of the created world. And so God does give us that permission to eat animal protein after the flood. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But here we go. We have all of created all the created universe, animals and man was vegetarian at that time. So you have the creation of animal kinds, then secondly you have the creation of mankind, verses 26 through 31. So let's back up. It says, then God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all of the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground. So there are several things of note right here. The first thing is that I want us to note that the Trinity was involved in man's creation. It says right there in verse 26, that God said, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. So you have the plural possessive used right there to indicate let us, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, they're communicating right here, let us make man in our image. So the Trinity is involved in man's creation. The word us is also used when we get into chapter 11 of Genesis. It's also used at the Tower of Babel. And that plural form of God is used. So the plural form of, the word God is El, but here we see Elohim being used. So it's plural form. All right, so that indicates a plurality, speaking of the triunity of God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The Trinity was involved in man's creation. The second thing, mankind was made in the image of God. So let's stop and define ourselves. Define what is happening. What does it mean to be created in the image of God? So here I am. Here's my dad. Lives up in heaven right now. And there's my son right there, BJ. Okay, we once submitted this photograph to the Fallon County Times in Baker, and they have every Father's Day they have a father-son look-alike contest, and we won 2 years in a row because we do look alike. All right, because we say that we're the spitting image of each other. And so having the image or likeness of God means in the simplest terms that we were made to resemble God. Adam did not resemble God in the sense of God's having flesh and blood. Scripture says that God is spirit and therefore exists without a body. So, however, Adam's body did mirror the life of God insofar as it was created in perfect health and was not subject to death. So there's a couple of things that we need to understand about the image. If we're the spitting image of God, it's not necessarily the physical, but it talks about the spiritual part of it. The image of God comes from the Latin, and Nate can read this, okay, right? No, you can't? Okay, imago Dei, meaning image of God, refers to the immaterial part of humanity. It sets human beings apart from the animal world, fits them for the dominion God intended them to have over the earth, and enables them to commune with their Maker. So here it is. It is a likeness mentally, morally, and socially. So when we're talking about the image of God, and you, all of us, we're creating God's image, it means we're mentally, morally, socially reflective of His mental, moral, and social being. Morally, humanity was created in righteousness and perfect innocence, a reflection of God's holiness. God saw all He had made, humanity included, called it very good, and our conscience or moral compass is a vestige of that original state, the capacity to make free choices. Whenever somebody writes a law, recoils from evil, praises good behavior, or feels guilty, he or she is confirming the fact that we are made in God's own image. So you got, first of all, that moral aspect. Secondly, you have the mental aspect. Humanity was created as a rational, volitional agent. In other words, man can reason and choose. This is a reflection of God's intellect and freedom. Anytime someone invents a machine, writes a book, paints a landscape, enjoys a symphony, calculates a sum, names a pet, he or she is proclaiming the fact that we are made in God's image. So here we have the mental aspect. So moral, mental, social. Humanity was created for fellowship. This reflects God's triune nature and his love. In Eden, humanity's primary relationship was with God. Genesis 3:8, we'll talk about that here in the future. It implies fellowship with God. And God made the first woman because it is not good for man to be alone. Every time someone marries, makes a friend, hugs a child, or attends church, he or she is demonstrating the fact that we are made in the likeness of God. So what you see happening here, you have the moral part, you have the mental part, you have the social part. Being created in the image of God means that you have a will, you have an intellect, and you have emotions. You have at the core of that, you have a heart. Okay? There is a complexity, there's an intricacy to that.
Let's take this for an example. Cut it out on battery, and that's a good time to change it because we've got a little video I'd like to share with you. And just our eyes alone. With this one organ, God has brought about so many amazing things. So here's a little clip about our eye, and it expresses all these things: mental, social, emotional things associated with these one organs in our faces. So take a look at this.
The reflected light of the world enters through the crystal transparency of the cornea, aqueous humor, lens, and vitreous humor to project onto the photoreceptors of the retina, whose impulses converge on the optic nerve and then to the brain.
intricacies of it, and through that you can also express emotion. All of these things can be expressed just through that one organ: happy, sad, pleased, angry, unbelievable, fear, fierceness, rage, sarcasticness, ill, nauseous. Okay, all these things can be expressed through this one organ. And that is part of being created in God's image, being able to express oneself mentally, socially, emotionally, morally. The good news is that when God redeems an individual, right now we're far from that original created being as we were supposed to be in the garden. But the good news is that when God redeems us as an individual, He begins to restore that original image of God, creating a new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. That redemption is only available by God's grace through faith in Jesus Christ as our Savior from sin that separates us from God. Through Christ, we are made new creations in the likeness of God. And so, having that ability to be reflected in the image of God is completed through a relationship with Jesus Christ. But the problem is that today, by its own definition, by what science, evolutionary science has to tell us today, that we're not created in the image of God. We're just a random chance act of mistakes in the past. By its own definition, the image of God is not even a part of the picture. We're just a mistake. Just descendants from apes, from animals. Evolutionary thought is based on inequality and promotes natural elitism. Even Darwin originally, when he titled his book The Origin of Species, the full title is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, on the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Inherently, at the very core of what it means to be an evolutionist, is that you're a racist. That you look down upon others for their differences. It establishes a hierarchy with more evolved at the top of the evolutionary ladder of death and struggle, and you have the less evolved at the bottom. When you start applying this principle through social Darwinism, as it has been marked by leaders like Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, the end result is millions and millions of innocent lives justified by eliminating those least fit, often those of another race, even in our own country. It has resulted in the eugenics movement, with thousands of black men being sterilized and some 50 million babies being aborted, mostly minority babies. Margaret Sanger, she was a proponent of evolutionary thinking. The founder of Planned Parenthood believed that she was working in accord with the universal law of evolution, as she was saying. And she maintained that the brains of Aborigines were that the brains of Australian Aborigines were only one step more evolved than chimpanzees and just under blacks, Jews, and Italians. Okay? She said the most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. That's the founder of Planned Parenthood. Inherently an evolutionist at her heart, and there is a racism and a devaluation of life when you do not adhere to the truth that mankind was created in God's image and therefore valuable. In biblical Christianity, there's a value to all human life, and there's no room this saying, okay, we're elite, rest are down there. There's no room for it in biblical Christianity. Galatians 3:28 says, there is no Jew or Greek, slave or free, male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. There's no room for racism. But when you have evolutionary thought pervading a society, then you have the issues that we're facing today in such a huge. When you take out the moral aspect of being created in the image of God, what happens? You have no morality. You have no social. You have no emotion. It just becomes chemistry. Okay? You're just doing what you do just because that's what you do. There's no choice. That's what happens when you take the image of God out of the picture. So, number 2 was mankind was made in the image of God. Number 3, mankind was created male and female. Okay, you can't put it any simpler. Alright, it says, in the beginning, God created them, male and female. This is where God first instituted genders, roles, and established what marriage is. That's what we're going to get into in chapter 2. If you want to get a good design of what marriage should be like, you need to be here when we get into chapter 2. Even Jesus attested to this. In Matthew 19:4-5, he answered, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. There's a lot of people who say, well, the Bible doesn't say that, marriage can be a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. Apparently they haven't read their Bible, okay? Right at the very beginning, God created them male and female. Jesus reinstituted that, reiterated it, and he said, okay, male and female, they leave father and mother, they get married. Can't put it more succinctly than that, okay? And of course, this teaching will fly in face of our modern culture, which at my last recounting, they said that there's 71 genders out there. Okay, I can't even begin to, they even have this huge website of the new gender that's been given out today. And at my last counting, there's 71 of them, and I think there's more than that. I just stopped counting after 71. Okay, go back to the Bible. It says, in the beginning, God created them, male, female. Simple as that. But somehow we have convoluted the whole entire situation by saying, oh man, I feel like a dog today, so that's going to be my gender. And it sounds completely ridiculous, but it's out there. And we laugh at it, but that's what people are putting on their Facebook profile and putting on their application for work. I'm not male or female, I'm just non-binary, trans something, I don't know. Trans fat or trans cholesterol something. God created male and female. Very simple. Number 4, mankind was blessed to have dominion over creation. And the word dominion is the Hebrew word radah, meaning to rule. And the usage of this indicates who has value. Look right here, it says, God blessed them, verse 28, said to them, be fruitful, increase in number, fill the earth, subdue it, or have dominion over it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, over every living creature that moves on the ground. For those who do not accept mankind being created in God's image and equate, people start equating animals with humans, they accept that they're descendants of apes, and so there's a problem when we stop saying we have dominion over the animals, is that they start saying that we're equal with the animals. And the problem is today there's a discontinuity between humans and non-humans. And so you have Harambe out there, okay, and everybody's up in arms over an ape dying. But here we have 50 million babies being sacrificed for man's convenience. 50 million of them, and there's not even a peep made over these humans, created in God's image. There's a discontinuity between humans and non-humans. And so what you find is that people equate animals with humans, but here in Scripture we are to have dominion over them. We're to honor, we're to take care of this created world, but there's an inequality there. We are to have dominion, to rule over the created world. Now, let's back up a little bit. If evolution were true, the earth should be littered with the remains of hundreds of thousands of transitional forms. Okay, that means there should be millions of these fossilized animals between apes and humans, but there just aren't any. The last 2 centuries are littered with evolutionary hoaxes like Piltdown Man and Java Man, Nebraska Man. Okay, that was early on. It was in the late 1800s they came up with these, and they found out these were all hoaxes. Okay, not until the middle of the 1900s, and then the damage was already done. They came out and had a Heidelberg Man come along, built from a jawbone that was conceded by many to be quite human. You had Nebraska Man, found this tooth and said, "Oh man, this is a evolutionary link," but they found that was actually from the tooth of an extinct pig. You had Piltdown Man, the jawbone turned out to belong to a modern ape. They found that over there in England. Okay, so they had this back in the 1800s and said, "Oh, look at all these connections," and they built cases on it. The Scopes trial was based largely upon these fake evolutionary links, and then in the 1950s, 1970s, they found out, oh, these are fakes. But the damage was already done. And this has infiltrated our society, has infiltrated the thinking of our whole entire education system. And what you find is that all these were hoaxes, and we just kind of lived with the lie all along. You take also, for example, man has 46 chromosomes, great ape has 48 chromosomes. Okay, so at some point, if man were related to apes, then you'd have to have an additional chromosome added along the way. But what happens if you add an additional chromosome to man? What you have as a result is Down syndrome. Okay? If you take away a chromosome, you have other conditions such as what is it? Okay, so you have Down syndrome. From that, you have Turner syndrome if you take away. So if you add information or you take away information from the existing chromosomal chains that we have, then you have life actually deteriorates. There's a certain complexity to our chromosomal chains that you cannot tamper with it, or your bodies just break down. There's a developmental thing that just does not work if you add more information to it. If you try to take ape and human chromosomes and try to combine them, try to combine human and chimp DNA, the result is that you have disease, and that's the result. You have the AIDS virus, which is the fusion of these two right there. There is no connection between the two right there. Man was blessed to have dominion over creation, and the times that we try to fiddle with those things and try to find those connections between man and apes, the supposed connection between them, you have disease, you have difficulty. It just does not work. One last little thing. I read an article this past week. It was actually pretty cool. It stated that blue-eyed humans, okay, how many people have blue eyes? Okay. We got brown poop eyes. But I love my kids' brown poop eyes. They're awesome. Okay. I read an article stating that blue-eyed humans have a single, this was from a Denmark study, okay, University of Copenhagen. They said that blue-eyed humans have a single common ancestor. Okay, they did a DNA study and they said all these people have one single common ancestor. It's reading here, people with blue eyes have a single common ancestor. Scientists have tracked down a genetic mutation which took place, notice this, 6,000 years ago. Okay, tell me what happened 6,000 years ago. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth, and then on the sixth day, God created man. And they're just finding this out. And I'm telling them, it's been in this book the whole entire time. And they just came out with this study. It was Adam at the very beginning. So here's the thing. You have a choice today. Either you are a random collection of chances and mutations, you live, you die, and nothing else happens. Or you are designed with a purpose. And you have been created from the very beginning with a purpose, as it was with Adam, of glorifying him. Either you have no meaning, or you have all the meaning in this world to bring honor and glorify him. So what he wants you to do today is to glorify him with everything that you are. When you wake up, what you eat, how you treat this body, how you treat that person that God has blessed you with, how you go and do your work, how you complete your tasks, all of these things. If you have a purpose and it's to glorify him, it's for everything that you are today. And when I stop and think about that, if I'm not just a random chance thing of accidents and mistakes, then I stop and think that God has something amazing and perfect for me. And when I start thinking of my life in that aspect, it's a lot easier to build relationships. It's a lot easier to say, God has blessed me with Christy and with my kids. And to treat them and honor them and love them such as God has loved me. If you start thinking life in the vein of God having a purpose for every single thing in your life, even the difficult things like cancer, and the difficult things like accidents and pain and struggle. If you start thinking that God has a purpose and he has designed you from the beginning, if you have a purpose from the very beginning, then you start thinking, okay, God wants to use the good things and he wants to use the bad things in my life. And only when we start seeing life through that lens that we start having clarity and seeing things from a greater perspective, that God has a purpose for you and he works all things together for good for those who love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. He has designed us from the beginning with that purpose. Let's pray. So Lord, I pray that we will see everything that happens in our life through these lenses. From the lack of rain to lots of rain. From the lack of a harvest to much harvest. From pain and struggle to joy and sorrow, from happiness and blessing, to all those things that we have in our hearts and lives. Lord, help us to see it through the vein and through the lens of your almighty purpose and your will. Help us to see things from your perspective. And that's my prayer this morning. All of this, we pray in the precious and holy name of Jesus our Savior. And all God's people said. Amen. We're in a new chapter next week. Okay? So stay tuned. There's going to be some good stuff. So, we'll see you next time.